Welcome to this week's On the Land. Here, there's been a few changes. There's a new set and a new name and a whole lot of things that are very, very different, which is going to be like, for example, the website. We're going to hear more about that shortly. And no tie, no jacket. The executive producer, whom we will be meeting within this program, wanted me to be a little bit more casual, a little bit more sort of laid back, a little bit more sort of open neck shirt and no jacket. You're going to see how it all unfolds. But anyway, it's all very good. The things we're going to be looking at this week, we're going to look at the dairy unit at Lincoln University. We're going to be looking a fair bit at the drought. We're going to be meeting a man who is growing walnuts very successfully. And we're also going to be looking at a new grass. It's not for eating, but apparently it is making a very, very big name for itself. And I guess making a big name for themselves, you look at IRD and Trade Me.
Yes, the IRD have come after Trade Me. They went to them and said, look, give us all the names of the people that are on there. Trade Me sort of tried to fight back a bit, but they've had to hand over 45,000 names, basically to IRD, giving all their details, their personal details, their full transaction history, and basically every bit of information possible.
So that's going to get a whole lot of people from IRD pretty busy for the next couple of months.
It is, and it's because they've gone after those that are on there trading or sort of buying goods and then on selling them for a profit. And there's a lot of it going on. It's also, they're aware that there's people that are selling stuff on there that potentially aren't in their books anymore and trying to make a bit of quick cash to put in their back pocket that IRD don't get any tax on.
So how does that work? You bring it down, you devalue it.
Yeah, well, basically, like, you've got some assets in your book. Let's say you've had them for 15 odd years. It's down to a couple of dollars in your financial statements. So you tell the accountant, look, just write it off. I don't have it anymore. And then, of course, we write it off. We don't think it exists, and they flick it on Trade Me and you know, put $1,000 or something like that on it, and hopefully sell it for that money, and we don't hear about it.
If somebody's been doing that, Kerry, are they able to come clean and ring IRD and say, well, ring you and say, listen, we better declare what I've been doing?
Definitely, yeah. They've got to go to IRD with a voluntary disclosure. There's a proper form to fill out. They're going to have to be upfront and honest as to why they've done it. They can't sort of say, oh, I forgot, because it's pretty obvious they're doing it. They're going to have to say, oh, they didn't realise it wasn't in the books or something, you know, come up with some feeble excuses, basically, is what they're going to be. And then you're at the mercy of IRD. They're going to come after them for penalties and interest.
But it's best to actually face them now rather than have IRD knocking on your door.
Yeah, you don't want them coming to you because that's when they're going to come heavy-handed. They're going to say, look, you didn't pay the tax, we're going to charge the full amount of penalties. Whereas you're up front and do your voluntary disclosure, you can actually get a lower penalty rate because they'll write some off or they'll give you extra time to pay. There's a few ways to negotiate your way through it, but not if they come to you first. You've got very little left to argue with.
See your chartered accountant?
Definitely, yep. Go and talk to your accountant and tell them that you've been doing it and sort of disclose all.
Over a period of time, you and I have discussed drought relief as far as IRD are concerned and perhaps delaying provisionals. Is that we got through that for most of the country?
We're finding a lot of the dairy farmers we've been dealing with, they've been able to get through it. They're hanging in there. Their cash reserves are getting a bit low now, but they have been able to do, especially in the instalment arrangement with IRD, and say to them, look, you know, we've got like this tax due sort of around this time. They're saying, look, we can't afford to pay it all in full. Can we pay it off over 12 months? And IRD are pretty understanding. They'll work with you. They're not there to put you out of business. They know the dairy farmers are having a hard time.
Well, not just dairy farmers, there's a lot of
farmers, yes, yeah. But the dairy ones are the ones that's really focused on. And if you ring up and say, look, I want to pay it off, they say, yep, how much do you want to pay a month?
Or how much can you pay a month? Yeah.
Yeah, well, they don't even ask that. They just say, how much do you want to pay? And you tell them your figure. So instead of you having to sort of justify it, they're just going with that figure. So it's been pretty good of IRD, actually.
Does that mean they don't add all the penalties and bits and pieces on?
They don't add the penalties, but they still charge you the interest.
Yeah, okay.
So at the moment, and I've just announced the interest rate's going up to 9.21%. So it's fairly hefty, but it's cheaper than some of the overdraft rates out there that we've seen.
Yeah, okay. Now, IRD, bless their hearts, have been trying to simplify the tax system.
Yep, they've been working with the government, and the government's just come out with what they call a green paper, where they're trying to say, look, we want to bring the tax system into the 21st century. Here's some ideas we've got, and they've got some outstanding ideas. It's great. They're quite exciting, and they're wanting people to sort of get involved, comment, get feedback. and just generally try and help revamp the tax system because it's been around for a long time and they know it's hard for business in terms of costs.
It sort of sounds like the regional councils and the Resource Management Act, doesn't it?
Yes, yeah. Except they're going to be more proactive in this one and get it right.
So, Kerry, basically, how do people get in touch with the possible changes or the ideas?
Well, the first step is this green paper has come out. If you haven't got a copy, get a copy of it, because it outlines things to especially provisional tax and PAYE. And so you can have a good read of that. They've got some questions in there, and then over the next sort of year and a half, something like that, they're going to start reducing a lot of discussion papers, and that's where they'll ask more detailed information, and you can make a formal submission as to what you think they should be doing. And it's your opportunity to get in there because they want to hear from businesses and farmers, etc. out there exactly what they're facing and what they want to see.
That's good, isn't it, that they're doing that?
Oh, it's great. It needed to be done. One of the big things I've realised that provisional tax is very, very hard on business. You know, 3 lump sums payments a year is just crippling for some. So they've come out and said, look, we want to revamp that whole thing, and here's an idea of what we've got. And then they want to see whether it's going to work for people and whether it's easy to manage.
And I guess especially with new businesses, because you set up and then you've got the terminal tax, and at the end of that,
yes, yeah. So your first year,
wallop.
you've got no cash going out for tax, and your second year you get hit hard with 2 years. With their proposed system, it would make it easier. You still got that sort of big hit coming, but it's spread out more, so you can sort of plan better for your cash flow.
Because that's what the average, I think there's about 80% of businesses get into major trouble in the first 5 years.
Yes, definitely, and tax is normally the first thing that gets them. After that, it's normally people not pricing right or something like that, but tax is normally the crippler.
Yeah, it is indeed. So what are they trying to do, make it level for us people?
They're trying to make it easier for people to pay their tax. So one of the proposals, instead of paying it 3 times a year for your provisional tax, you pay it more regularly, so you pay it as you go sort of thing, like PAY effectively for permanent employees, except businesses will do that monthly. So you don't have to sort of save up and then suddenly all this cash goes out. You can say, right, over the next 12 months I'm going to have, say, $3,000 a month to pay, and you can budget accordingly.
Are they going to do something like a withholding for contractors?
That's still there, but they're looking at that system as well. At the moment, an employer has to go on the 20th of every month, pay it to IRD and file a whole pile of paperwork. They actually want to get to the point where you file it as you go. So every time you do pay for somebody, it effectively gets updated to IRD.
So yeah, I mean, it is quite revolutionary because we lead the world, I understand, in gathering it, but we
Yeah, exactly. And it's going to cut down a whole pile of paperwork, which is what we want, but they are going to make you do it more computerised, which is not a bad thing.
Well,
that's where the world's heading. So if you're not there, you're going to find it hard.
Look at our program on the land. I mean, it's all tied up with websites and YouTubes and things that boys like me don't actually understand, but we don't need to.
No, exactly. So that's where they're heading, though. They want it all to be done through some sort of software provider. So you'll just do, process your pay, for example, click a button and IRD automatically gets the information.
I mean, it's like GST now. I mean, I don't think anybody does it with a cheque anymore.
We've probably got about 3 or 4% of our practice that do, but they're
3 or 4%
but to be
of
fair,
your
they're
practice.
sort of 70-odd years or older, and that's all they know is just checks.
Yeah.
But most of them, it's all online now. That's the best way.
And so we're moving on, aren't we?
Yes.
And I guess that means that somebody like yourself can have clients all around the world.
Yeah, and we have. We've got them all around now. It means that there's no boundaries anymore. It does mean that IRD get a bit more coming in, of course, because they can spread their reach further. But there's nothing wrong with that.
No, because, every dollar that they gain from somebody else is a dollar that they don't have to worry about.
Exactly, yeah.
And as we've always said, don't mess with the IRD because they'll get you.
They always do in the end, yes. Yeah.
And do talk to your chartered accountant.
You need to, yeah. Get your account updated on everything.
Kerry, thank you very much indeed. Kerry will be very regular here on the land. In fact, about every fortnight, giving you a bit of an insight as far as accounting is concerned, farm accounting, IRD, and things you can save money on and things you can benefit from and things you shouldn't really have an attempt at. Now, dairying. We've been talking dairying about some of it's been pretty tough for a lot of them, but the people who do the heart on the sleeve, the open heart surgery, if you like, is the Lincoln University unit. And first of all, I talked to them about the season.
Yeah, no, she's been a different season, this one, as most of them are. We had a very cold spring. It was quite a dry spring, so utilisation was very good of grass that we did have. It's been a really full-on irrigation season this year. It seems to be quite busy, just chasing irrigation around every day. Yeah, no, we've grown enough grass. Quality's been an issue with the heat. Grass has been wanting to go reproductive for a lot longer this season because of the hot weather. So quality's been a bit of an issue for us this year.
So, culling, you've started to move on that.
We've got rid of all known culls already this season, just with the low payout and having to feed a bit of supplement out this autumn. It's just not profitable to feed them supplements, so they've already gone.
Replacements.
Our replacements, yep. Well, they're all doing very well. There's something that you already got to look after in a dry year like this and make sure you don't forget about them. But they're looking very good. They're well above target weight, so looking forward to milking them next year.
Production?
Yep, production, it was well on target. We were looking to do sort of 500 a cow milk solids on all grass this season with about 300 kgs of dry matters grass silage brought in. It was looking very good up until sort of Christmas time, or a bit after Christmas, but then with dropping the culls and that, we're probably not going to quite reach it.
And winter?
Winter? Yeah, we've got our winter sorted. Our cows are where they go. We know we're going to have feed for them this year, but it's going to be tight for some people with the dry summer we've had.
Some of the stock are off farm in the winter?
Yeah, most cows will go off farm to grazing blocks, so they'll be off June and July and come back at calving.
How did the demonstration day go?
Oh no, we had a really good turnout. There was just short of 300 people turned out, and very interesting. And yeah, the next one's on the 7th of May.
And of course, you've got a website.
Got a website that we upload to every Tuesday when we do the farm walk around the farm, so that's available for everybody to look at.
Indeed, the art of getting more from less. Now, after the break, I'll be introducing you to Dave Dunlay.
You know that saying, content is king? Well, in today's mixed media world, it's true. You need video, audio, photos and more for social media, for marketing, for communications, sales and for advertising. And you need this at a price that works with your budgets. Well, that's what we do. At Tandem, we partner with you to create the content that you can use to shout to the world or video link to a few. Connect with us and we'll help you connect to the world. Be Active begins here in the cold, clean, unpolluted southern oceans of New Zealand. Be Active amino acid biostimulant, natural, 100% pure, manufactured from healthy deep sea fish from sustainable New Zealand fisheries. New Zealand's Be Active amino acid biostimulant, the way the world is growing. Working with nature, good for the plant, good for the planet. Now that's growing for good.
I've been reporting on farming matters on the radio and newspapers and on television for 40 or so years, but communication, like farming, has moved on. So we've come up with On the Land, online and through YouTube on any screen, anytime and anywhere. Just push play and see and hear what's happening today in our rural community. You'll learn and be informed about the latest and best information farming matters. On the Land, bringing farming information into the 21st century. So join us on our website, ontheland.co.nz. Welcome back to On the Land. Well, obviously you're watching this on a television set, but there is more to On the Land than just television, Dave. We're basically taking us into the 21st century.
How you going, all right?
Yeah, good.
Yeah. Well, as you've said, farming matters changes constantly, the way we do farming, the way it's presented, the way it's marketing, and I think the way that the information is being found and used to help farmers is also changing. And that's why we've created ontheland.co.nz, is just to create this large video library of information that can help farmers, and no matter what area of farming they happen to be working in.
It's a reference library?
It's a video library, it's information, it's tips, it's meeting people, it's sharing stories from the community, it's latest technology. It's got a little bit of everything in there. We've created 12 different categories, and as you know, it's hard to compartmentalize farming into 12 different categories, but it's everything from cropping to irrigation to the communities, which we're both big supporters of. I've just come back from Roxburgh in Central Otago, which is my hometown. And I come from a family of orchardists down there. And being back in that community again of 800 people, it was a school reunion, 150th school reunion. And it just made me realise how important interlinked the rural community is with the towns and with everything and everybody. And it's the heart and soul of our communities.
I think the wonderful thing about the website, the ontheland.co.nz, is that people can come back and say, look, I just want to double check on what Dennis Carter said about what I should be putting
that's
on.
Right. Well, they can also watch it on any screen as well. You know, we're watching, or people are watching on TV now, but they can also go back and look at the videos on an iPhone, an iPad, or their computer, and they can watch it at 2 o'clock in the morning if they wish.
If they can't
Or
sleep.
if they're getting up for dairying really early and want to watch the video just before they go out and bring the cows in, they can do that as well. So it's that time-shifted viewing, which is the big difference that's happened in media. I mean, I've worked in media for over 30 years, as you have, and you used to turn on at 6 o'clock to watch the 6 o'clock news, which a lot of people still do, of course, but now you can watch the 6 o'clock news at midnight if you want to. It's called time-shifted viewing, and it's giving people the option to watch whatever they want on any screen they want at any time they want. And that's the big change that's happened in media over the last few years.
So you can be sitting on your quad bike behind a whole lot of dairy cows watching it on your iPhone.
Well, possibly not well advised to do that, but you could do, yeah, if someone else is steering the quad.
Yeah. Tell me about Tandem, because you've been around for about 40 odd years and you've got all sorts of tricks up your sleeve.
Well, Tandem Studio started back in 1974 in Christchurch as a recording studio, and over the years they've recorded a huge number of bands and musicians. Suzanne Prentice recorded here, John Grinnell, Bic Runga, Anika Moore, all these different artists over the years. But these days, well, media has changed and bands aren't recording anywhere near as much as they used to, so we had to change with it. So about 10 years ago, when YouTube came along, I suddenly thought, oh, you no longer need a TV station. YouTube is the way to get your message out. And so we just started experimenting and loading videos up 10 years ago, and since then Tandem Studios has loaded well over 30,000 videos into YouTube. And we have one particular client, Parliament. So if you go to the website inthehouse.co.nz, we record every single moment of Parliament, and then we edit those into small bite-sized video clips. And that video library we've created on In the House, which we will eventually do with this show On the Land, now has 25,000 videos in it. So you can go into that video library, find videos on every single subject that's been spoken about in Parliament over the last 5 years.
So if I've got a problem with biosecurity and I want to know what's being said by whom...
You can go into that website and search topic or person or date, and it brings up the video information for you in those short bite-sized clips. And then also it's important today to be able to share video through social media. You know, with Facebook and Twitter and all the different social media channels. If you're watching a video and you want to share it with your friends down the road or on the other side of the world, it's important to be able to share that video through your own social media. So you can do that through our website On the Land as well.
So I guess in a funny sort of a way, if somebody's watching an interview on the land, on their television set, on Face TV,
yes,
and they go, Bill would be very interested in that. So they then go onto the website, send it off to Bill.
That's right. You can just search for Bill or, you know, whatever the subject may be, and then you can watch the video. And we edit them down to about anywhere from 3 to 5 minutes long, because on the web, people don't want to watch long videos. And then you can watch that and then share it out through your social media.
This is worldwide. I mean, we are very new here in New Zealand doing this, but
right.
We're following the rest of the world.
Well, this is the trends that's happening because, as I said, that time-shifted viewing, the way people are using and viewing media is changing now, and they're using the internet so much. TVNZ on demand, TV3 on demand. We've heard about Netflix and, you know, Spark with their Lightbox TV channels. All of that entertainment's now being delivered via the internet, and we're the first rural farming show that is doing exactly that, putting it so it can be viewed on the internet. Now, I know that some rural communities don't have great broadband, and that is an issue, but I've read a statistic that 50% of the farmers now do have good access, and that is only going to continue to grow as each year goes by.
And of course, you've got your networks as far as your cell phones are concerned.
Yeah, that's right. Yes,
so you can get onto that by doing that.
Well, that's also
it's
important.
It's very confusing for somebody who's 65, you understand.
Yeah, very true. But if you're watching video on cell phone, that's another reason for making the videos really short. So then you're not chewing up all your cell phone data and spending huge amounts of money watching the video via the phone.
How do we use the website?
Well, literally, you just go to the website ontheland.co.nz, you see those 12 different categories that we've broken the farming matters into, and then you click on one of those categories, and then you will see the list of videos through there, and you just scroll down until you find a video that's of interest to you. So pretty easy.
It isn't hard, is
Yeah.
it?
Also, we've got a newsletter there as well. So if anybody watching on Face TV at the moment wants to sign up to these regular newsletters, you'll be then sending out a newsletter saying, oh, well, this week we spoke to this person about that particular subject. So it's another way of communicating to people.
So I'll be able to send out basically everything that's on this week's program.
Yeah,
like
that's
we're
right,
talking
yes.
dairying,
Yeah.
we're talking walnuts, we're talking website and technology.
A little bit of everything.
Yeah, it is, because, you know, really, as you said, we are breaking new ground here. This is, but we are following the rest of the world.
Yes, and it's a trend that is, I think, going to become more and more common as time goes by.
Young people, and I mean people who are up to about 45, 50, are all, they're not watching television much more.
Well, they are, but not necessarily sitting down at that set time. They might be watching TVNZ on demand at 10 o'clock at night, or they might subscribe to Netflix and watch a movie at, 2 o'clock in the afternoon that suits them. So people are still consuming information and they want to be entertained, but that traditional way of getting that information has changed dramatically over the last few years.
It's quite realistic to be the main point as far as information is concerned for farmers.
Yeah, I think so. Well, that's what we'd like it to be. Country Calendar for us, for both of us, is a huge role model. Here's this farming show that has been an integral part of New Zealand culture now for, I don't know, what, 40, 50 years possibly, or something
It's probably
like that?
50, because I've been around for 40.
Yeah, so for a long time. And if we can sort of create this massive video library of wonderful information and entertainment and be like Country Calendar in 50 years from now, I'll be very happy.
So would I be.
Yeah.
I wouldn't mind being around either.
Yeah, if we're around in 50 years from now.
Thank you for doing that, because it really is a complex sort of a subject for a lot of people, and you've made
You've
made it very easy to understand.
All right, Rob,
No,
cheers.
thank you very much indeed. Now, as far as federated farmers are concerned, they're very much part of the scene, and bottom line is that they are still worried about the effects of the drought, even though it has rained. The drought, it's really biting, and a lot of people are hurting.
There are some people that are hurting. People that have taken less care to organise themselves early when the dry spell came are feeling the pinch the most. We've got the added pressures of the dairy payout being lower than desired, and also we've got the fact that we've got quite a few people farming in Canterbury now that have only been here for a short time, that have come to expect that what we call wet years here in Canterbury is normal, whereas in fact this year is more normal than what we've had for the last 10 years.
There's plenty of warning.
There was, but it's like most things. You can be warned, but until it bites you in the butt, then you don't always take as much notice as you should.
So what sort of rescue systems are there in place?
The big things are now is for people to actually accurately assess the situation that they're in, to understand how much water they've got if they're irrigators, or what their stocking rate is in terms of what feed's available on their farms now. It's really important that if you need help and that you contact your farm advisor or your banker and your accountant, those people need to be brought in. Family needs to be brought in so that they understand the situation, so unrealistic expectations are not, an issue. What we have learned is that those people that act early, go to their banks and give them the full story in their worst case scenario, tend to come off better. It means that banks can understand that they're proactive in dealing with the issues, and it tends to show them as being better operators, which also gives confidence to banks. If banks know the worst case scenario, they can plan for it, and they don't like surprises. So they need to know so that they're on a non-surprise basis. Workers are like family, and one of the things that we know is that if any family member is in stress, you rally around and you help. When there's stress in the organisation, you need to stop and think of all of the people around your business as being part of your family. And that means making sure that their families are also okay. So regular meetings, regular talks and updates in terms of what's actually happening on farm, keeping them out of the loop does not help. And sometimes just getting their input can actually solve some of the problems that you have. So communication is always the key in this.
Destocking? Are people destocking and destaffing?
I haven't heard too much about destaffing as yet, but destocking is a standard practice in the dry. Most of the dryland farmers do this routinely. The old days they would have all of their lambs off before Christmas, and they would be getting off their cull ewes in early January and running it right down. Well, I know some farmers now who are down to almost no stock, and later on if they've got feed because they had no pressure for stock, they can then buy in. Whereas others who are heavily stocked now and hoping that it will rain may be in some difficulty. The rain today is really, really nice. People will be smelling the nice crisp air that we've got and saying, this is wonderful. But it's not a bad start.
It's only a start.
That's right.
The Rural Trust, that will be playing a fairly big part now.
Yes, they've been getting busier, which is good because that's what they're there for. Anybody who has any problems at all that they're not quite sure how to deal with, An easy contact is 0800 Farming, which puts you in, in the hands of our federated farmers, people who can direct you to the services that you need, regardless of which service it is, whether it's help through the Rural Trust or whether it's help through farm advisory or government agencies.
And thank goodness federated farmers and people such as themselves are about. After the break, we're going to be looking at a new grass which isn't for pasture, it's actually for weather, as well as a lot of other things.
You know that saying, content is king? Well, in today's mixed media world, it's true. You need video, audio, photos and more for social media, for marketing, for communications, sales and for advertising. And you need this at a price that works with your budgets. Well, that's what we do. At Tandem, we partner with you to create the content that you can use to shout to the world or video link to a few. Connect with us and we'll help you connect to the world.
I've been reporting on farming matters on the radio and newspapers and on television for 40 or so years, but communication, like farming, has moved on. So we've come up with On the Land, online and through YouTube on any screen, anytime and anywhere. Just push play and see and hear what's happening today in our rural community. You'll learn and be informed about the latest and best information farming matters. On the Land, bringing farming information into the 21st century. So join us on our website, ontheland.co.nz.
Be Active begins here in the cold, clean, unpolluted southern oceans of New Zealand. Be Active amino acid biostimulant, natural, 100% pure, manufactured from healthy deep sea fish from sustainable New Zealand fisheries. New Zealand's Be Active amino acid biostimulant, the way the world is growing. Working with nature, good for the plant, good for the planet. Now that's growing for good.
Welcome back to the program. Lincoln University is working on a lot of things, but one of the things that Steve Ratton's working on is a new grass, which comes with a pretty big reputation.
We think it's magic. I mean, it's magic in many ways. One is it's virtually the first use of it in this country. Secondly, it's sterile, meaning no weeds. Thirdly, it grows much taller than me. It grows to 4 metres in 2.5 years. Doesn't need many fertiliser inputs, doesn't need much water, and so far we haven't found a single pest on it, which makes a change.
So if it doesn't come into seed, how do you propagate it?
It has big rhizomes, sometimes as big as a rugby ball, and they can be chopped up into little pieces where each piece has one bud on it, and they can be just scratched into the soil. The other method is we buy plantlets, baby plants, from a company in the North Island, and they can go into a vegetable planter as if you're planting broccoli or something. The latter is slightly more expensive than the former, so we like the chopped up rhizomes.
So tell me about its attributes. It's tall, and is it edible?
It's tall, it's 4 metres tall in 2.5 years. The dry matter yield, which is largely cellulose, is about 40 tonnes per hectare per year, which is amazing. I mean, wheat plus the straw, I imagine, would be less than that, but anyway, 40 tonnes per hectare per year. And it can be used as bedding for animals in houses, and certainly in Britain, it's the commonest bedding material used for cattle in sheds, actually. And cattle can eat it. It's not as good as a really good roll of silage, but it is a supplementary food. And actually, we have some analyses going on now in this building, looking at dietary fibre and nutrients of it, just to see where it is positioned with other common foods for animals. But as a supplementary food, we think it's got high value.
Obviously, it can be used as a shelter under irrigation, such as centre pivots.
Well, people moan about dairying, don't they? Because when they set up a dairy farm, they often take out all the woody vegetation first, because the central pivot can't go through. All those macrocarpa hedges and pine hedges, well, they're non-native, but they had a value. This is non-native and has a value too. And one value is the wheels of the central pivot irrigator go straight through it, and unlike bamboo, which is too woody and would not come back, this comes back to a vertical position. So it's perfect for a busy dairy farm.
Attributes as far as heating is concerned?
The main interest worldwide in this is that using a rather clever machine that's been developed in the USA, you can make what's called renewable diesel from it. Now, we don't mean mineral diesel, which you buy from the gas stations, which comes from is a fossil fuel. we don't mean biodiesel, which is usually based on a plant oil like canola, oilseed rape. We mean renewable diesel. And unlike biodiesel, this stuff doesn't need any chemical treatment and can go straight into the gas tank of a tractor if the tractor is parked next to the machine that makes the oil, if you see what I mean. So it's called drop-in diesel, and that's very attractive, meaning a dairy farmer or a group of farmers could get together, have one of these machines near them, transport the bales of miscanthus to the machine, and literally take a truck or a fuel tanker and take their share of the diesel away with them when they leave the site. And I think that's rather exciting.
So it basically is crushed, is it?
First of all, we chop it up. Then we have next to the machine, we have a little a diesel generator that provides the heat. And the diesel that goes into the generator to make it work is the diesel we made yesterday, if you see what I mean. And then we add the chopped up material into the diesel, and it's pushed using a pump through pipes, and the heat is generated by the generator, and a system called pyrolysis occurs, and the diesel comes out the pipe. And that's my intellectual level in terms of describing engineering, but that's more or less what it does. And the waste products, in quotes, are not really waste, are water, carbon dioxide, and ash. And unlike the carbon dioxide that comes from burning fossil fuels, this carbon dioxide was made by the sun 3 years before. So it's sustainable in that word. And the ash contains little bits of carbon, charcoal in it, which is basically what we call biochar. And we know very well that since over 2,000 years in South America, biochar has used to improve the quality of soil. So as well as all the shelter and all those things it provides, it actually has added value fuel. The fuel is added value because it's not biodiesel and can be used straight away, and the waste includes charcoal, carbon, if we want to add that to the soil to improve it. And we're looking at a price per litre, initial thinking of not more than $1.10. So although we've got oil shales being mined all around the world with great environmental damage, diesel won't stay this low, mineral diesel won't stay this low. So we think $1.10 or less is going to be a bit of a market winner.
As a heating product?
Well, you can use it in diesel generators and in diesel burners using the liquid fuel, or you can put it on the conveyor belt with coal in a system that's heating a boiler. And we actually know that some tractors, you can put an attachment on the back to turn it into little cubes. It's really compressed very tightly, and these cubes are about the size of pieces of coal that go on a conveyor belt, so it can be used as a feed for boilers as well. So the list of values is very high. On the pasture itself, going back to that, a key merit is that because it cuts down the wind, which in Canterbury will be a cold southerly or northwesterly or something, the pastures, grasses, continue to grow because of the shelter. You know, all plants have stomata, little holes through which they breathe. Those plants close their stomata if it's windy because they lose water that way. Because of the lack of wind, downwind from this plant, the stomata stay open in windy conditions. That means we're getting 14% increase in pasture yield up to 100 metres downwind from the grass. Well, that's measurable economically and physically, 14% increase in grass yield. So it's about 16 benefits last time we counted.
Does seem to be magic, as Steve suggested. After the break, we're going to be talking about irrigation and the support system for farmers.
Be Active begins here in the cold, clean, unpolluted southern oceans of New Zealand. Be Active amino acid biostimulant, natural, 100% pure, manufactured from healthy deep sea fish from sustainable New Zealand fisheries. New Zealand's Be Active amino acid biostimulant, the way the world is growing. Working with nature, good for the plant, good for the planet. Now that's growing for good. You know that saying, content is king? Well, in today's mixed media world, it's true. You need video, audio, photos and more for social media, for marketing, for communications, sales and for advertising. And you need this at a price that works with your budgets. Well, that's what we do. At Tandem, we partner with you to create the content that you can use to shout to the world or video link to a few. Connect with us and we'll help you connect to the world.
I've been reporting on farming matters on the radio and newspapers and on television for 40 or so years, but communication, like farming, has moved on. So we've come up with On the Land, online and through YouTube on any screen, anytime and anywhere. Just push play and see and hear what's happening today in our rural community. You'll learn and be informed about the latest and best information farming matters. On the Land, bringing farming information into the 21st century. So join us on our website, ontheland.co.nz. Welcome back to On the Land. Just to reiterate just a wee bit about how we fit in with the website. We've got a website called www, obviously, that's the triple W's and then the dot. Then it's ontheland.co.nz. Now, the neat thing about that, as you would have heard from Dave, was the fact that you can use it as a reference library, or if you miss the program, which we do hope you don't, but if you can't for whatever reason watch us at 8 o'clock on a Sunday night on Channel 83, you can go back and you can watch it, and there'll be short, sharp bits, because that really is what the viewers wanted. They said that they wanted it short and sharp, 24/7, anywhere that they want to be able to see it, they wanted to be able to do it. So, ontheland.co.nz. Now, in the meantime, let's catch up with Tony Daverin about the season. So it's been an interesting summer.
Yeah, it has been an interesting summer. Not unusual. If you look back over time and look at the demand, irrigation demand in seasons, we've had these before. It's just that we haven't had one this severe probably since 1997-98. And in fact, the whole season mimics, to a large extent, 97-98. If you watch the way the El Nino or the Southern Oscillation Index has developed over this season, so starting back in July and August last year, and look at the rainfall patterns on a month-by-month basis, very, very similar to 97-98. The scary thing about that is that it didn't really break in 97-98 until May. So if the seasons do mimic each other perfectly, or follow the same pattern as they are at the moment, then it could be May before we get some serious relief from the dry, and despite what other people say, we have a drought.
So how bad is it?
Oh well, it's on a scale. If you look at the last sort of like 50 years of record where we can model demand, irrigation demand, it's up there with the It's not the highest. I mean, we have to go back to 88, 89, and farmers probably with the colour here I've got will really remember 97 and 88, 89. That was really severe because it started way back in September. We had really warm temperatures, high northwest winds all the way through to February, and didn't really get any relief until we got into about June that year. So it's not on the scale that we had in 88, 89, but it's certainly up there in the top 5 or 6 events that we've had in the last 50 years. There's water restrictions everywhere, including the big rivers. I mean, if you go to the Rakai earlier this week, Band 3 water, which is generally relatively reliable, they were down to 8% of their allocation on Monday. Fortunately, it's been a little bit northwesterly in the last few days. We've got the river back up, and most people are on full takes yesterday and today. So that's a relief, but we've been on really restrictive flows. I mean, almost all of the lowland rivers, the foothill rivers, no water out of them at all. Even the Balmoral scheme and the Amuri scheme in Colverton, which is usually relatively reliable, has been on restrictions. And of course, everybody hears the plight at the Opua Dam, where they switched irrigators off nearly 2 weeks ago, and are probably very close to actually running out of water to supplement flow in the river. So it's severe. Groundwater's fine. What is starting to bite with groundwater is that farmers, irrigators who have not operated very efficiently or might have low annual volumes, or have increased the area of land they're trying to irrigate with the same annual volume, have run out of annual volume. Now, Environment Canada has been very proactive about this, and we're able to get if you can find someone that will lease you some water for the rest of the season, we're doing partial transfers for farmers for the rest of the season, generally through to about April the 30th, and they're being processed in a very, very, very rapid manner at the moment. So there's a lot of those going on at the moment, if you can find somebody that's got some water in your region.
There'll be a loss of production?
There's going to be losses in production. I mean, dryland guys, I mean, I don't know what the yields are going to be like, but there's not going to be very much harvested. Some of the dryland crops that I do know that have been harvested averaged about, some of the wheat on pretty good soils is about 1.5 to 2 tonnes to the hectare. To the acre, sorry, so that's only about 3 or 4 tonnes to the hectare. That's really low. But for the most part, on irrigated properties, our yields have been very good. The wheat yields have been very good. Ryegrass yields have been good. You know, we've had, for those sorts of crops, we actually had, in Canterbury, we actually had relatively good growing conditions for those crops. They grew in cool, temperate climate, temperatures and weather in that September, October, November, early December period. And sure, they got pushed along pretty hard from, you know, the 2nd or 3rd week of December through to harvest, but they've also been harvested in relatively good conditions. You know, we haven't had too many problems with harvest. I mean, might be nor'westerly rain today, but for the most part, we've been able to, you know, guys have been able to go out and harvest when they've needed to harvest. So, but for anybody dryland, anybody that had that didn't use their water judiciously, especially pastoral operations, there'll be some yield losses.
So where to from here as far as irrigation and as an industry is concerned?
Oh, look, I think this is a real wake-up call for people. Anybody taking water from groundwater, and this doesn't just apply to Canterbury, this applies to anybody that's taking groundwater in New Zealand, everybody's going to have an annual volume, or they already have an annual volume. You must start out at the beginning of the irrigation season believing that this could be the 9 out of 10 season or the 90 percentile season, which is what your water is allocated on the basis of, particularly in Canterbury. You need to be in the shoulders of the seasons. That's the early spring to mid-spring. You need to think more seriously about how much water you're putting on. So if you just start and irrigate in the hope that everything's going to grow because you've applied some water, you need to look at other factors. The number of people that we know that have run out of annual volume and do no soil moisture monitoring or anything. It's just, I'm going to start irrigating and I'm going to irrigate and I'm going to carry on. They're not making any objective decisions. And it's probably a wake-up call for those people as well to make sure that they do some other monitoring, soil moisture, soil temperatures. Make sure your water meters have been verified, for example, so that you know that you are pumping exactly what you should be pumping. Had a very good example in the last couple of days where somebody was taking stock water and shed water, but the pump was registering 20 litres a second. Well, it can't get up and out of a 2-inch or 50 millimetre pipe at 20 litres a second. So logic would tell you there's something wrong with the water meter. But that has put them over their allocation for that particular take. And they gave it no thought at all. So it's probably, the season has probably been a very good wake-up call. We all know that water is a scarce commodity, whether it's coming from rivers, storage or groundwater, and we have to use it wisely and judiciously, and this is probably a very good wake-up call that these objective measurements are really important to the management of the resource.
Indeed, very interesting times as far as irrigation is concerned, and Tony will not only be on the program very regularly, but it'll also be, of course, on the website, which is ontheland.co.nz, so you can check back and make sure you've got everything that you need as far as irrigation is concerned. But Doug, as far as the drought, there is a pocket which is still very, very vulnerable.
There certainly is, Rob. That's an area north of Amberley, extending from Haran-Waikari across through Cheviot and down to Omi and out to the coast. And currently, according to NIWA figures, that has got the highest moisture deficit in New Zealand. So it's pretty tough going. A lot of the other areas have had quite a bit of rain over the last few weeks, but that area is extremely dry right now, something like 40 or 50 mils since the 1st of January, when the average is about 200.
So we're well into April now. It's going to make all sorts of problems psychologically as well.
Well, certainly that is coming up. we've got a network of people in the area. We're hearing from them. We're also hearing from stock agents, vets, rural bankers that some farmers are really struggling. When you're spending $5,000 a week to feed your stock, it is not very long before you have to make decisions about whether you can keep feeding or you start to reduce numbers, which means that you're getting into capital stock.
And of course you're selling at the bottom of a market.
Of course, and right now probably the thing that's saving that area is that there's quite a strong demand, particularly for calves, beef calves, from the North Island. So the prices that they're getting for them are probably nearly on a par with last year, but the beef market again has been pretty strong right through the season.
Politically, I guess Nathan Guy has sort of forgotten about drought.
Well, Rob, our trust is determined not to let him forget that, because Nathan Guy is making a visit to North Canterbury. I think that's on the 17th of April to a function at Tamania called the Heartland Forum, and he is one of a number of reasonably heavyweight speakers coming to that, and it was to include the Prime Minister. I'm not sure if he's still coming, but Peter Townsend and Dame Margaret Baisley and others are coming. But the important thing for the Minister is that he will actually be driving through some of the driest country in New Zealand right now, and will give him an indication of where they're at. And certainly our trust would be urging the Minister to at least maintain the drought declaration for at least the Huranui district, or maybe a slightly bigger area into the spring, because this is going to have quite a long-term effect on a lot of farmers.
He should understand, because he's a farmer himself.
Well, he should. I think he's might be a dairy farmer, I'm not sure, but I did see him at the field days recently where he actually started a chainsaw and cut a log in half, so I was quite impressed with that.
But he did have a chainsaw.
He did, and he had the right gear.
Exactly. Rural Trust, you are the ambulance at the bottom of the cliff.
Well, we hope we're not totally at the bottom of the cliff. We're having, in conjunction with Beef and Lamb, we're having quite a major function in Cheviot. That's next Tuesday. I think that's the 14th of April at the Cheviot Hotel, where and we're putting some money in that, and there's going to be a meal and a drink and a couple of speeches. Starts at 4:30, finishes at 8:30, but that function is being turned into more of a community function where farmers can come along and find out that there are actually other farmers that have got the same problem as they have, and it gives them a chance to get away from it.
And it's not going to be lectures at them, it's going to be rubbing shoulders.
Definitely not. That needs to be, that's actually quite important, Rob. They need to talk to one another, and they don't want to be talked at.
So you've got here, I've got a meeting the challenges as far as drought is concerned. This is from Ministry of Primary Industries. It's
It is.
compulsory reading.
Well, it is, and they are widely available. We're actually in the process of dropping those pamphlets off at vets and stock firms, medical centres, right throughout this drought area, because I think it's important that farmers can pick that up and have a look at it. I mean, most of them will know what it's like and the things to do, but that will be helpful for some of them. And it's got some good reference numbers in there too for farmers who might be feeling that they're just getting over the top in terms of stress.
The other thing, Doug, is that if people don't want to buy one, or get one, I should say, because they think that it's nothing wrong with me, there can be one left on a kitchen table by a spouse or by a sibling or a child or whatever.
Yes, no, that often happens, and having them at the schools is quite a good thing too, because you know, it's amazing, as you say, how they find their way into the kitchen over time.
You're talking long term here too, aren't you, as far as drought effects and you're going into the spring?
Well, that is a real concern, because right throughout North Canterbury, the rams are out now, apart from perhaps the high country, and people, while they're feeding their sheep, there will definitely be an effect on the lambing and calving percentages in the spring. Farmers' cash flows are probably quite good at the moment because they're selling extra stock, and starting into their capital stock. So the cash flow will be quite good, but where it will catch them out is into next season, particularly in that sort of maybe that September to Christmas period, where they won't have the carryover lambs to sell and some of the cattle which would have been sold, which would be normally sold then. So that's when there will be some real cash flow problems, and there is other help available through the Rural Support Trust in terms of rural assistance payments for farmers who literally are going further into debt to put food on the table.
What are you saying, $5,000 a week to feed their stock?
Well, that's right, and I mean that's probably an extreme case, but most farmers on the downland country in that area will be paying quite a bit to feed their stock, and there comes a time when it's a balancing act whether they keep feeding or start dropping numbers. So it's a difficult decision to make.
Winter's just around the corner, everything stops growing.
That's right, and that is a worry. I know a lot of the feed crops are nowhere near where they normally are, and a lot of sheep and beef farmers, Rob, the icing on the cake for them is taking in dairy grazers, and of course they've had crops of kale which would have gone in probably end of November, and normally now would be at least 2 feet high or more, and are only 3 or 4 inches. So they're going to miss out on that income, a lot of farmers, which is going to make it really difficult.
Psychologically, you guys are there 24/7.
We are, and we're the other thing we're developing along those lines is having smaller meetings with up a road where a farmer can get 5 or 6 of his neighbours there, and we can have a little small function where they come together of an evening or late afternoon, and we might get an accountant along there, or a vet, or even the local doctor who comes in and talks to them about all sorts of stress-related issues, both to do with the stock and themselves.
Because there's also things like you can talk to the Inland Revenue through your chartered accountant and so that sort of thing.
Of course.
Thank you very much indeed. I'm Rob Cope-Williams. You've either been watching or you've just missed On the Land. But if you didn't catch it, don't forget it is on the website ontheland.co.nz. Until I come back again next week at the same time, bye now.